Governments are doubling down on censorship. Countries like Iran, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia are blocking websites, monitoring online activity, and arresting those who challenge the faith online. But here's the catch. The internet, unlike the printing press, is unstoppable. Where there's a will, there is a way. With VPNs, encrypted chats, and anonymous accounts, dissent continues to grow. The Streisand effect kicks in every time something is censored. Ban a video, and 1,000 copies show up across YouTube and Telegram. Jail an atheist blogger, and their story becomes international news, inspiring more people to question. The result is a feedback loop of dissent and exposure. This shift is seismic. Islam, a religion that once punished a mere whisper of doubt, is now being openly mocked, critiqued, and abandoned by millions in real time. And it's happening because the internet has made asking questions impossible to suppress.
First off, this whole claim that Islam is being abandoned by millions in real time because of the internet, straight up exaggeration. Sure, the internet allows for more open discussions and critiques, but this guy is acting like people are running away from Islam in a mass just because of a few bloggers or VPNs. That's not what's happening. Islam continues to grow globally, both in birth rates and conversions. So this mass abandonment narrative is just not backed by reality. Now, about governments doubling down on censorship, yes, some Muslim majority countries restrict online activity. That's not unique to Islam. Authoritarian regimes around the world censor content, regardless of religion, to maintain control. He's cherry-picking examples from places like Iran and Saudi Arabia, acting like this is a uniquely Islamic phenomenon, but you can see similar trends in non-Muslim majority countries too. And let's not confuse governmental actions with Islam itself. These are political moves, not religious doctrines. He brings up VPNs, encrypted chats, and the Streisand effect as if these are some magical tools that are dismantling Islam. Let's be real. Yes, censorship can backfire, but that doesn't mean Islam is crumbling because of it. The internet also allows for more Islamic education, dawah, connection among Muslims globally. For every critical video, there are countless others spreading Islamic knowledge and strengthening faith. The internet goes both ways. It's not just a one-sided attack on Islam. As for his claim about atheist bloggers being jailed and their stories inspiring others, again, this is more about authoritarian regimes than Islam itself, and let's not act like people questioning faith is unique to Islam. Every religion faces scrutiny online. It's not some seismic shift exclusive to Muslims. But what he conveniently ignores is that a lot of these so-called critiques or doubts end up bringing people closer to Islam when they dig deeper and find the answers. Lastly, this dramatic statement about Islam being openly mocked, critiqued, and abandoned doesn't hold water. Sure, there are people online mocking Islam, but that's happening to every religion forever. The fact that Islam continues to grow despite all of this says a lot about its resilience and strength of its message.
Now, the argument against all this might be, well, Islam is growing at a fast rate regardless. And sure, on the surface, that's true. But let's look a little deeper. Islam's rapid growth isn't coming from widespread conversions. In fact, it's almost entirely birth rate driven, concentrated in underdeveloped countries with high fertility rates. For example, countries like Niger, Somalia, and Afghanistan have some of the highest fertility rates in the world, averaging 4 to 7 children per woman. These are also regions where female empowerment and education rates are alarmingly low. Research shows a strong connection between fertility rates and women's access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. In many Muslim majority countries, restrictive cultural norms and limited access to education keep women out of the workforce and in traditional roles, leading to larger families. Compare this to Western countries, where Muslim immigrant families experience a noticeable drop in fertility rates over just 1 or 2 generations. For instance, Muslim women in Germany or the US often have fertility rates closer to the national average, about 1.5 to 2 children per woman. Why the change? Because once women have access to education, contraception, and greater autonomy, family sizes tend to shrink. But here's the kicker. Even among those born into Islam, apostasy is rising, especially in the West. Converts to Islam, particularly in Western countries, are leaving the faith at strikingly high rates. Studies show that 50 to 70% of converts to Islam in the US eventually leave the religion. Let that sink in. For every person who converts to Islam, the majority end up walking away. Pew research highlights that in the US, for every one person who converts to Islam, nearly a quarter of those raised Muslim leave the faith. Globally, Islam's image as the fastest growing religion needs context. It's a facade. Yes, the numbers are increasing, but not because of conversion or ideological appeal. It's a demographic story centered on birth rates in underdeveloped regions, and one that is increasingly challenged as Muslims migrate to more secular, empowered societies.
Yes, high fertility rates in countries like Niger, Somalia, and Afghanistan contribute to Islam's growth, but this argument falls apart when you consider that Islam is also growing in regions with lower fertility rates like Europe and North America. It's growing through conversions and sustained identity of Muslims. Ignoring these factors and reducing Islam's growth to birth rates is misleading, and importantly, the article used to support this claim has no citations or evidence to back up its assertions. While it's true that education correlates with lower fertility rates, this is a global trend, not exclusive to Muslim majority countries. Christian majority countries in sub-Saharan Africa have similar fertility rates. Furthermore, Islam has a rich history of emphasizing education for both men and women, as evidenced by the Prophet, peace be upon him, command to seek knowledge. The challenges in Muslim majority countries are not just religious, but also influenced by historical and socioeconomic factors. Yes, Muslim women's fertility rates align with the national averages in Western countries, but this doesn't reflect negatively. It shows that Muslim communities are integrating while maintaining their faith. Even with lower fertility rates, Islam remains the fastest growing religion in these regions. So, Islam's growth isn't simply driven by birth rates. Next claim, 50 to 70% of converts to Islam leave the faith. This claim, taken from an unverified article with no citations, is highly questionable. The reality is that converts to Islam often face challenges, like cultural differences or lack of community support, but that's not an indictment of the faith itself. Despite these challenges, Islam consistently ranks as a religion with the most converts globally. High-profile converts, like Mike Tyson and Jay Palfrey, show that Islam resonates with people from diverse backgrounds. For his next claim, that for every convert to Islam in the US, a quarter of Muslims leave the faith, this claim is misleading and has already been debunked. The US is a secular society, and high attrition rates in all religions are common, including Christianity. Islam, on the other hand, has a strong retention rate globally, with millions of followers across different socioeconomic and cultural contexts. This argument about Islam's growth being a facade driven by birth rates ignores the bigger picture. While demographics play a role, they don't tell the whole story. Islam's message continues to resonate with people across cultures, generations, and countries. The simplicity of its teachings, the strength of its community, and the clarity of its spiritual purpose keeps Islam thriving.
No sources, man. These are all just links to his other articles, bro. Like, what? What? Man, what is this, bro? No sources anywhere on this freaking thing. No sources. What is this, bro?
So, when people argue that Islam's growth is inevitable, the truth is far more complex. As education levels rise and the internet reaches even the most remote corners, the dynamics will shift. Higher education, especially for women, can foster critical thinking and the questioning of long-held beliefs. Combine that with exposure to diverse ideas online, and suddenly, people aren't limited to their local imams' teachings. They're engaging with ex-Muslims, historians, scientists, and philosophers. This is already happening. In places like Iran and Saudi Arabia, the rise of the non-religious among the educated and internet-savvy youth shows how powerful this combination is. This brings me to something both funny and ironic. A lot of Muslims are either misguided or, let's say, engaging in some creative reinterpretation of their religion. Some do it intentionally, via a concept called taqiyya, while others are just repeating what they've been told without digging deeper. Just remember, the vast majority of Muslims don't speak Arabic and therefore don't understand the Quran and the Hadith as they were written. Either way, they end up whitewashing Islam.
While it's true that access to education and internet can foster critical thinking, the claim that Islam's growth is doomed because of its overlooks some important factors. First, critical thinking isn't automatically synonymous with abandoning faith. In fact, many educated Muslims use their knowledge to deepen their understanding of their religion, finding new ways to interpret it within modern contexts. Secondly, the idea that most Muslims don't understand the Quran or Hadith because they don't speak Arabic is misleading. While it's true that not all Muslims speak Arabic, the vast majority still engage with the Quran in their native language, and many scholars and translators dedicate their lives to explaining these texts in accessible ways. Plus, the notion that this leads to whitewashing Islam is unfounded. Islamic scholarship has a long tradition of encouraging deep, nuanced engagement with the text, often fostering better understanding rather than more repetition. Finally, the argument that the internet is only pushing people away from Islam disregards how many Muslims are using the internet to reconnect with their faith. Online platforms also provide spaces for Muslims to discuss their beliefs, connect with scholars, and challenge ideas constructively, helping their faith grow in an informed modern context. So, while some may question their faith, many others are strengthening it, aided by the tools of education and technology.
You've probably heard excuses. Islam is feminist. Sure, a religion where a man can marry 4 women and women's testimony is worth half of a man's in court? Totally feminist. Or, Muhammad was not a warlord with a child bride. Let's just ignore the countless hadiths that say otherwise, right? Islam has no colonial past, except for the centuries of conquest under the Ottomans and other empires. Slavery never happened in Islam, conveniently forgetting it was sanctioned in both the Quran and the hadith. The list goes on. Women's rights, LGBTQ acceptance, tolerance, you name it. The denial and whitewashing are almost impressive. But here's the twist.
Islam is feminist is a flawed claim. Let me tell you something. This is not the whole story. Yes, Islam gives women rights, but it doesn't neatly fit into the modern feminist box you're trying to shove it into. To reduce the complexities of Islamic teachings on women to just this one point is a huge oversimplification. Yes, women have the right to inheritance, to education, and the right to divorce. But pretending that everything's perfect and equal in every regard without understanding historical context and everything else in Islam, that's not only misleading, it's a gross misrepresentation. Who are you kidding? Muhammad was a leader, yes, but not in the way you've been brainwashed to think. The wars he fought were in defense of his community. And as for his marriage to Aisha, you can't apply today's standards to a 7th century society. You want to talk about history? Let's talk about how at the time it was common for girls to marry young. You can't cherry pick events to match your narrative without understanding the complexities behind them. Now your next claim is about Islam's colonial past and slavery. Now, this is just rich. Let's talk about the Ottoman Empire. Yes, they expanded, but so did countless other empires, including Christian ones. And guess what? Islam provided ways to treat slaves humanely, even encouraging their emancipation. It was progressive for its time, but you're too busy ignoring the full context to understand that. To claim Islam is uniquely to blame for these things without mentioning other empires' actions, that's playing dirty, and you're not fooling anyone. Claim your next claim, denial and whitewashing? Oh, so now Muslims are all about denial. Please, that's not exclusive to Islam. Every group does it when they want to protect their image. But here's the thing, your attempts to push this narrative don't change reality. You don't want to talk about the bad parts of history? Let's have an honest conversation about them. Denying that bad things happen doesn't make you right. What matters is how we learn from it, not bearing it under some misguided agenda.
Trying to make Islam look more palatable to modern audiences, they're inadvertently reforming it. By denying or downplaying the less savory parts of the faith, they're reshaping it, consciously or not, into something that aligns more with modern values. And if this continues over the long term, it could actually lead to a large-scale reformation. It's exactly what happened with Christianity. Over time, reinterpretations and reformist movements softened Christianity into what we see today. So whether they realize it or not, Muslims insisting that Islam is feminist, tolerant, and progressive are planting the seeds for a very different version of the religion. And that, ironically, might be the reformation they claim Islam doesn't need. It's almost poetic, really. The same people defending the faith are unknowingly changing it, and maybe, just maybe, that's how the story ends. Of course, for any meaningful reform to take place, certain conditions are crucial. This kind of change can only happen in environments where free thought is protected, places that value assimilation and resist the influence of hardliners. Mass, unchecked immigration has to be significantly overhauled to prevent this in the West. It's equally vital to prevent the erosion of these freedoms. Blasphemy laws disguised as hate speech regulations, for instance, must never take root. The ability to question, criticize, and even mock is the foundation of progress, and without it, reform remains impossible. Take the UK or even Australia, for example, cautionary tales of what happens when these principles are compromised. And yet, the catalyst for this transformation, the silent force rewriting the narrative, will almost certainly be the internet, a network that knows no borders, no clerics, and no fear of blasphemy. It has become the great equalizer of ideas. In the end, it may not be wars or revolutions that reshape Islam, but the quiet, unrelenting hum of a Wi-Fi signal. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and leave your thoughts.
You're not fooling anyone with this reformist narrative. He's trying to claim that Muslims defending their faith are somehow unknowingly changing it, almost like they're reforming Islam. Let's break this down. The fact is, Islam has always adapted to the needs of its time without needing some reformation like Christianity did. What he's missing is that Islam's core principles, its teachings, the Quran and the Sunnah remain intact, timeless. For the record, calling the defense of Islam's values reformist is insulting. When Muslims uphold what their faith teaches about justice, equality, and the protection of human rights, that's not reforming Islam, it's living by it. Reinterpretation doesn't mean changing its essence. It's a response to misinterpretation and misconceptions like this one. He thinks that the internet will be the catalyst for Islam's so-called transformation. Let me tell you something. This is not a one-way street. While the internet may provide space for diverse ideas, it also gives Muslims around the world the ability to present their faith clearly and in its true light from people who know it best, the believers. So good luck with that narrative. In the end, he's trying to twist the facts to fit a narrative of inevitable change, but all he's really doing is peddling half-truths and manipulation. I hope you guys found this video informational, educational, maybe helped you. If you guys did, consider subscribing. Thanks again for 50 subscribers. I really appreciate it. Have a good day. Bye.